So you're replacing with a diversity of tree species, and with the grant program that you currently have, there is no cost for removal or replacement to the homeowners that are associated with that property.
Correct. It won't cost anything directly out of their pocket. It's kind of your tax dollars at work.
Okay.
And we're going to have, we have a door hanger that's been created that kind of explains everything about it. So the tree is going to be marked with green paint, where most folks in Minneapolis, and I think probably even beyond, are used to orange paint or red paint, kind of identifying an elm tree that it needs to be removed. But we've always used orange paint also, but the green paint is going to be just for the ash trees. So the idea of making that connection between the emerald ash borer and the green paint. But we're not going to force these removals on people. If they see that tree is marked and they get this door hanger which explains, hey, here's why we're doing it, it's going to be removed, replaced. But occasionally we do have folks who, I'd still rather have the shade even though the tree is, got its whole top cut off under the wires. I'd still rather have that shade for a while. And I'd rather just wait till the ash borer comes along and actually does kill off the tree. And in those cases, that's fine. We'll just, black out our green paint mark and we've got plenty of other trees we can concentrate on. But we're trying to look at those trees that have a problem. They might have a big trunk scar. Occasionally we'll have some where the tree actually just leans too far over the traffic corridor. So if you've got a big truck, you can end up having to clip the top of the tree. So those are all the types that we're looking at as trees that could be removed. And then hazardous trees, which we'd be doing anyway. Any tree that's hazardous is going to be falling under that. And that would probably be the one where we wouldn't really give folks a choice because the tree's got something wrong with it where it could fall and hurt somebody. But yeah, we're trying to kind of ease people into it so they don't see things happening all at once in a shocking way. Now, St. Paul, on the other hand, is approaching it more in like the whole block. Let's get rid of this whole block of ash trees and replace it with a combination of new trees that will diversify and you'll get that change that you're after a little more rapidly. But until we actually find it in Minneapolis, we thought this would be a good way to get people used to it.
Okay. So you have funding for 2 years with the DNR program. Mm-hmm. So you're getting everything started. Assuming that there is no money forthcoming from the state after that, is the city of Minneapolis planning on continuing that program?
I think we are because we know eventually we're going to still have to deal with ash trees once the borer gets going. And I think the tricky part is going to be how well we bid all of our trees. We don't grow our own trees. They all come from commercial nurseries. So part of it depends on how those prices come in for the trees we're going to be buying, and then how many we can stretch out of the budgeted amount we have for planting trees. The removal is not the hard part. That's very easy because we use our in-house crews to remove the trees. It changes some things in terms of maintaining the urban forest because now we have those crews removing trees instead of pruning trees. And we try to keep on a cycle of pruning the tree in a routine way, up a street, down a street, kind of. I always describe it as kind of like we're the army ants of tree pruning, where we're just assembly line, just kind of keep things moving ahead of the problem. So that will change a little bit, but we also need to think about how far we can also stretch our dollars for stump grinding. And those are all done by a private contractor, so the bids go out, and we have private companies that the economy in a way has sort of helped us because the prices have become very good in terms of that stump grinding. So yeah, we're going to continue it, but we're not sure until all those sort of unknown factors are weighed into just how much we can keep going in terms of the extension of the grant. The grant, we think, will get us about 300 to 400 trees removed, and we probably think we'll get more than that because it depends on the size.
Well, behind me is a little bipolar oak, one of the replacement trees for this street that is one of our ash streets. And this is very typical of what we're doing now. We're looking at lesser used tree types that we can incorporate into the population of trees so we have more of those. And so oaks are one of those we don't really have very many of. They're a very small percentage of our boulevard tree population.
Now, City of Minneapolis, you have your own program, you have your own budget, you
Correct.
have your own crews and services to do that. A lot of the communities, the surrounding communities in the metro may have a city forester if they're fortunate, but a lot of them don't even have their own crews or their abilities to do that. What lessons from what you've done this last year do you think you could give to some of these
Yeah,
other communities that may not have the resources that Minneapolis has?
Not too long ago, I went up to Fargo and gave a talk with the North Dakota Urban Community Forestry Association. And in North Dakota, for example, their ash are a much higher percentage of their tree population that they're going to be losing. And I think one of the things when you tell folks, for one thing, just stop planting ash trees, start planting something else. When ash trees do so well, and even in some of the metropolitan cities, ash trees do so well, it's hard to kind of think, geez, is it really necessary to stop planting those when they're one of the trees I kind of rely on? Well, the more you add into the system, the more you're going to have to remove later on, and they're growing between now and then. So it's kind of a gamble. I mean, if you don't know how long it is until it's there, and then you've got these trees that if you had planted something else. So I think that's probably one of the main things is just stop planting ash trees and look at some of the other types of trees that you can end up incorporating into your program that you probably never even thought to use. And one of the trees we could use more of are Kentucky coffee trees. And there actually are now some of the cultivars that don't have the seed pod that sometimes maybe is a thing people would complain about. So we're looking at espresso Kentucky coffee tree as another type of tree to plant on boulevards. And so that's probably one of the key things is, just start now at attritioning things out. If you've got a reason to remove a tree, let's say there's a park improvement project, you've got a path going in. Well, rather than squeeze that path between the oak trees and the ash trees, just get rid of the ash trees. Give the path plenty of room away from the oak trees. So reasons like that you can incorporate into your protocols, like just excuses to remove ash trees that you wouldn't have thought of before.
Now, again, a lot of these communities rely on their city councils to kind of okay things.
Sure.
And so really what we're talking about is it's not the sky is falling and you need to either tree to remove your trees now or you're going to be toast. Right. There is time to actually, inventory.
Correct.
Find out if you have ash trees and how many ash trees you have. And then once you've identified that, then you can kind of develop a selective removal program over the next 10 or so years. Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
Yeah,
here?
and that would probably be a good benefit because we're hoping that the state grants do continue. And that would probably be a good benefit for some of those smaller communities that don't really know what they are dealing with, what their impact is going to be, to have help in getting that inventory done, because there are software programs that people can actually very easily use themselves, but sometimes it takes a little training. And that would be a great way to get a handle on knowing, are ash trees a small percentage of my total population, or are they a overwhelming percentage that I really need to deal with?
And so dealing with homeowners who are calling in, I'm sure you get lots of calls from homeowners.
Yeah.
One of your primary things, right?
Oh, yeah.
What are you telling them about the trees in their yards? Not necessarily city trees, but boulevard trees. Are you telling them to look at removal and replanting, or how are you dealing with those situations?
Well, we're kind of steering folks in the right, just kind of in the informational direction in terms of a tree in their yard. Because, and I've kind of explained it like, if you're the elderly person and you've got a huge ash tree in your backyard and it's shading a deck, but you don't necessarily know how long you're going to be living in your house, maybe that's a good tree to treat. The investment is probably worth it because the cost of removing it and you're never going to see a tree like that in your lifetime, maybe that is a good tree to do some investing in. If you've got a small tree and you're thinking, let's say less than 10 inches in diameter, well, probably in a short amount of time you could even get a new tree to replace that tree. And probably the ideal thing would be, if you've got room, plant that replacement tree while you've still got the ash nearby. Let the replacement tree get some size to it, take the ash down, and to remember too, there's a little balance in terms of how much is it going to cost to remove a tree. I mean, the bigger it gets and the more obstacles there are around it, the more it's going to cost. So if you can remove it and replace it while it's relatively small, you just don't have that expense also.
So are there groups out there that are trying to take advantage of the situation, kind of coming in and saying, hey, Mrs. Jones, you need to take your tree down now? I mean, sometimes that happens in communities or...
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's some of the less scrupulous tree companies that will just immediately, hey, emerald ash bore's here. Get your tree cut down right away. And we've kind of told folks they need to do a little thinking about it on their own. You know, there are excellent resources through the University of Minnesota's Extension, Forest Resource Extension Office. Essentially, even just getting your hands on one of the brochures that's out there, where the 5 universities in the states that have been dealing with it the most have put this together, and it really explains a lot about, you know, injecting the tree, soil drench, you know, what's the spray, you know, what's the best angle or avenue for you to approach. With boulevard trees, and we kind of learned this from Dutch elm disease, rather than us dealing with every individual, what we do is we deal with the companies. And so the company, it's kind of like, using the plumber company versus, you know, every individual calling to get a plumbing permit. So what we do is we say, okay, tree care companies, if you want to work on a boulevard tree, because occasionally there are homeowners who want to invest in treating a boulevard tree, we'll give you that permit. And then when the homeowner calls us, we just say, hey, that's fine, but you have to use one of these companies, and we can even send you the list, and you can give them a call and kind of research what's the best approach for that boulevard tree.
And all of this information is available on urbanforestryinstitute.org too.
Mm-hmm. And our Minneapolis Park Board website, which is just minneapolisparks.org. That's an easy way to find that too.
And also, wasn't it emeraldashborer.org? Isn't that like a national?
Oh yeah, if you do a web search on emerald ash borer, you'll find out everything you want, including, and I always recommend people also look up the emerald ash borer song, which I do not know the lyrics to, and I will not try to sing that, but it's a little entertaining aspect about emerald ash borer. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ralph Siebert from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on board today. Next week, we'll be talking with Emily Ball, who is the city forester for the city of Minnetonka. They also received funding from the grant, but it's a different approach that they're taking to managing for emerald ash borer. Thank you. Why Trees Matter is brought to you by the Urban Forestry Institute. Our sponsor today was Rainbow Tree Care Companies, Science, Service, and Satisfaction. Our guest today was provided by the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board.